Hello and welcome to the Vision-Led Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Arin Fugate. I am a wellness educator and visionary leader. I'm on a mission to remind you that your intuition is always guiding you to your divine purpose. You were born at this time for a very important reason, and the time is now to shine in your truth. On the show, we talk about listening to your intuition, cultivating a successful mindset, next level leadership, and conscious capitalism. If you are new here, welcome. You are in the right place if you are a visionary leader ready to up-level your health and live in line with your true calling. Today on the show, we are talking with Lauren Ruth. Lauren is a certified women's health coach who helps purpose-driven women overcome exhaustion and reclaim natural energy and focus. She has over 15 years of experience using nutrition, herbs, and lifestyle medicine to heal herself and others. Lauren supports women who have big goals to beat burnout and feel vibrant, joyful, and alive. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Arin. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
I'm so happy you're here because my listeners need the information that you're bringing. It's such a big thing for women. We do so much, and I'm just happy that you're bringing this wisdom for us. So thank you.
Yeah, we really do a lot, and I love your intro. I love the work that you do and how you're, positioning your brand and supporting people in their businesses. It's just, we as women have so much to give. We have so much to give. We are so powerful. We are so talented. We're so smart and creative and amazing. And that doesn't mean we can give endlessly, right? Like we want to shine our light. We want to share our gifts. And yet, it's just not sustainable for us to give and give and give and give and give all the time.
Yes, there's so much here, especially when you're in business, because we're working within the patriarchy, and there definitely is this tendency for women to overdo it because we can. Okay, we're going to jump into all of this. I first have my icebreaker questions for you. One of my favorites. So you are about to go on stage or do a podcast or talk to a client. Do you have a song or a particular type of music that you listen to really get yourself in the mood?
That's a great question. I actually have a playlist that I listen to pretty much every morning while I'm stretching and doing yoga and making breakfast. So one of my favorite songs on there is Try Everything by Shakira. It's just so fun. And it just reminds me that no matter what I'm doing it. I'm making it happen. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just doing what I feel inspired to do.
Nice. I'm going to go listen to it for sure. We'll put it in the show notes as well. Okay. Second question is, I don't know, end of a long day, you're going to chill out with a movie, or maybe you're on a road trip, a time when you need a good snack. What is your favorite snack?
Oh, it's hard to choose just one, it's like, there's so many good snacks and I love food. It's really important to me. But I would say for travel in particular, one of my favorite snacks, especially in the summertime or warmer days, is almond crackers with homemade pesto that's dairy free. I make like a pumpkin seed parsley pesto, and it's just great with almond crackers.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. My mother-in-law makes some pretty epic pesto, and my little girls just eat it by the spoonful.
It's so good for us.
Pesto is so good. Okay, so you get the opportunity to sit down for coffee or tea with anyone in the world, dead or alive. Who do you choose?
Oh. Yeah, hard question. I would actually go with Marie Forleo. She is alive and she's a huge inspiration to me. And I would love to just sit down with her and say, thank you, and just and just share vibes with her because she's such a motivator and inspiration to me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, she's great. I love her. Everything is figure outable. Such a
Yes,
good mantra to live by.
super powerful.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into a little bit about your story. Kind of tell us how you started your business and what inspired you to do this work.
Well, it's interesting. It's like most people, my story is not cut and dry and linear. And, I love this curiosity of, why do you decide to be an entrepreneur or what motivates you to be an entrepreneur? And I think for everyone, it's a little bit different. But for me, it really boils down to the word freedom. So when I was actually in high school and, deciding on my career path and starting with college, I was actually going to college to be a librarian. And I love librarians, mad respect for the librarians. But when I was 19, I actually dropped out of college. My family was not pleased, but I dropped out of college and I moved into the wilderness to live off the grid and study survival skills. And that was just my jam. And I found myself, doing what a lot of people do in their 20s, which I wasn't thinking a whole lot about the future. I wasn't really thinking that much about my career at all, because quite frankly, I wasn't even trying to participate in the modern economy. I was living very frugally off the land. And that was just my bliss in my 20s, was just following my passion. And that really led me to study a lot about plants, a lot about wild plants, wild foods, plant medicine, nutrition, herbalism, and indigenous land management. Yeah. And so, I went through that process for about a decade, and it was, part of it was just following my passion, but a lot of it too was releasing these layers of societal expectations on what I should be or how I should show up or what box I need to fit into. And so it was really, for me, that time was about connecting with nature, connecting with the wild parts of myself, and really just, pursuing that freedom. And then it all kind of came to a head in my late 20s when a bunch of things happened. I had a vision come to me in a dream, actually, about my lunar calendar, which is this one right here. The idea came to me in a dream, and I just woke up and I said, I should make this product and share it with people, and then, and then CBD was kind of quietly legalized, and I was just so inspired about that, and so I got really involved in that, and I, found CBD genetics and grew my own CBD plants for medicine making, and I've been studying fertility awareness and women's health for many, many years. I've been charting my cycles using the symptothermal method since I was 19. And so fertility awareness and women's hormonal cycles, was also a really important key to my path. And so I had all these different layers of and then nutrition. I had all these things that I was passionate about. And then I had a health crisis, and I had to put all my years of experience studying nutrition for fun, and studying herbal medicine for fun to use, because I had this severe health collapse. I moved back onto the grid in 2016, and I had a really massive health collapse. So I basically had to take everything I'd learned and then learn a lot more as I went in order to rebuild my health from pretty much rock bottom to where I am now, using diet and lifestyle. And so, that's when I was really initiated into the healing work that I was doing. And that's when it started to fall into place of all these other things that I was passionate about, like, nutrition and herbalism and fertility awareness and, CBD even, and, moon cycles, that they weren't all these separate things that I was excited about and trying to decide between. I think that can really come up for a lot of us entrepreneurs of but what do I choose? Oh, how do I fit it all? And so that's when when I had my health crisis, and then in the years following that, as I healed myself and deepened my knowledge of human health and holistic health, that's when I really was able to fit them together into my now women's health coaching business.
Wow, that's an amazing story. There's so many things, like, kind of have to ground myself and be like, oh, what direction do I want to go here? Because first of all, how interesting would our world become if kids graduated high school and had to go live off the land for a year or two, right? Before they, I mean, I was homeschooled. So the idea of like graduate high school, immediately go to college, know what you want to be, get a degree, get into the system of debt doesn't make any sense to me. And I love that. I just love the idea of some kind of vision quest or really finding out who you are before you go and offer your things to the world. So what a cool experience for you to give yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and I love it when I see more and more of, earth-based skills because they're so core to who we are as a human. We are not separate from nature. We are a part of nature. And all of these traditional living skills, like people call them survival skills or primitive skills, but really they're the life skills of our ancestors. It's how we came to be here, is our ancestors surviving in that way and thriving really in community. And so I love when I see those elements built right into schools for young kids so they can just connect, because I mean it's a miracle to create fire, to like find food out in the wild and like have a reciprocal relationship with nature. It's a freaking miracle, and I love it how many schools and kids camps are integrating that now.
Yeah, very cool. So do you feel like your health crisis happened partly because of the shock of coming back into the grid?
Yeah, I mean, so my health crisis was the result of a lot of things. So in 2009, I was living in the mountains of Idaho and I didn't want a car. I was very idealistic and I didn't want to participate in the fossil fuel economy. And so I chose to use a mountain bike and a bike trailer to get around. The only problem was this bike trailer wasn't safe to go more than 18 miles an hour. And I was young and I didn't read the user manual and I had a terrible, terrible bike accident on my birthday. So, so I really consider it as a gift. Like it was a gift because it brought me onto the path that I am today. And I really value that. But yeah, I had a really, really traumatic bike accident where I broke my front teeth. And I broke my jaw, I tore my lip, there was a lot going on there. I'm really, really happy I didn't break my neck. But what happened is they put my teeth back together again. They kind of patched me back together again. And I had 5 root canals done after my jaw was healed. And those root canals were really kind of a hot mess and they failed. Apparently most root canals fail, but I ended up with this secret infection in my body for many years that was really taking its toll on me. Starting in my early 20s, I started having a lot of symptoms of like body pain and inflammation at that time that didn't make sense for my age and my lifestyle. And then there were definitely some trigger events. In 2015, I was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of acres of wildfires on the remote mountain property that we lived on. It was extremely stressful and extremely toxic. And then in 2016, moving onto the grid and spending more time on the screen than I'd ever done before, starting my lunar calendar business in 2016. So I spent a lot more time on the computer than I was used to. And I would say living in a house on the grid was definitely a shock to my nervous system, but that my health collapse was already well underway at that time.
Wow. Did you figure out the connection to the root canals, or did a practitioner help you with that?
I did actually. It was really intuitive. I found some research. So I found the work of Weston Price and I found the work of Hal Huggins. But when there's something that's kind of just in the back of your mind and it's this little voice and you don't really listen to it, but then you start meeting people who start saying the same thing to you that little voice is saying. And you're like, maybe I should pay attention to this message. So that's what happened. I kept, having this little voice in the back of my head saying, is there something wrong with your root canals? But I so didn't want to hear it, to the point that I wouldn't even really let myself think it all the way. But then I would meet people who would say, yeah, I used to have this problem, but then I had failing root canals. And then I would maybe talk about it. I would say, I've been wondering about mine and blah, blah, blah. And so it was actually, I'd been to many, many practitioners over the years to try to deal with, my body pain and my inflammation and other issues that were a result of my accident and the failing root canals, as well as the trauma of the accident. And yeah, I mean, none of them could figure it out. The only thing that they would say is, I had them, an endodontist knew that they were going bad, so they re-root canaled them, which really didn't help at all. It made me sicker, actually. So yeah, it was my intuition, honestly. And I had to fight, actually. I had to fight with the dentists in order to convince them to take my teeth out. So I had to fight really hard to talk the surgeons into removing all my front teeth, because that's a big choice, right? It's a big choice for a young woman to make on her own based off of her intuition. And it was absolutely 100% the right choice. Once they removed my failing root canals, they looked at them and they said, wow, this really needed to happen. Right there in the operating room, they just said, you were right, this needed to happen. And you lost a lot of jawbone in the process. I lost a lot of jawbone to infection. And then some of my symptoms that have been bothering me for years, like pain in my right knee and foot, just went away literally within hours. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I love that you're bringing up intuition, because as women, first and foremost, everyone has intuition, but women, I believe, have been our goddess given intuition has been ripped from us.
Mm.
And it's this interesting thing where it wasn't really taken away. It's there, but the belief that it is there was taken away, or the belief that there's access. And
Yeah.
I'm right there with you on the health journey and figuring things out. It's rarely been a practitioner. It's usually those clues. It's like somebody says something, or you read a book and you piece it together. And we so have to be these advocates for our own health and be in community where we can talk about these things. Because my experience is there isn't one practitioner that has the answer for us. We have the answer, right?
Mhm.
And then we seek out these connections and these guides.
Yeah, for sure. It's learning to trust my intuition, I would say, was one of the greatest gifts of my time living in the wilderness.
Mm, beautiful.
Yeah.
So I invited you on the call for many reasons, but one reason is we kind of discovered that we do share the love of the moon, but you also have this focus on metabolic health. And I am currently deep diving for the first time into metabolic health, because doTERRA, the company I work with, has released a new product line that's all about metabolic balance. And I just drove for 2 days from Salt Lake City back to Southern Oregon, where we live. And I was listening to podcasts about the glucose connection and balancing your blood sugar. And I had these huge aha moments. And I came home and I was like, to my husband and my kids, like, this is so important, you guys. Like, we have to be paid. Like, our blood sugar has to be this foundation. And of course, my husband was like, I've been telling you that forever, but it's not until, like, I really understand the why. That's the type of learner I am. If I can understand the why, then the path becomes clear. So I would love it if you would talk to us about why is metabolic health so important, and what is your take on it?
Yeah. So metabolic health is, oh, a lot of people think of metabolic health as burning fat, or it's about weight loss, right? If you look up metabolism, almost everything if you Google the word, what do I need to know about my metabolism, or how do I keep my metabolism healthy? It's going to be almost all about weight loss and, getting lean. And metabolism does play a role in that, but it is actually way more important than that. And it's how our body creates energy and utilizes energy. And we don't just need energy like you wake up in the morning and you don't need that second cup of coffee before you start your day. We need energy for our cells to function. We need energy for our brain, for our other organs, for every system in our body. For literally everything in our body relies on energy production, right? And so we consume food and drink and substances, and and our metabolism is how we process that. So part of why it's so important is because maintaining a healthy body weight is great, right? That really helps us to maintain our overall health. But just because you are lean does not mean you have a healthy metabolism. And just because you're a little bit bigger doesn't mean that your metabolism is completely out of whack, right? So that's one thing to pay attention to, is it's not necessarily about the number on the scale or fitting into your favorite old pair of jeans. It's more about maintaining homeostasis, right? It's more about honoring your overall health. And it's so important because as far as long-term health, right, we're looking at metabolism being linked. I mean, for decades, they've known in the scientific research community that metabolism is linked to cardiovascular health, with heart disease being the number one killer of both men and women, right? And diabetes, right? So metabolic health is a contributing factor to both heart disease and diabetes, which are extremely prevalent. And they really not only reduce people's lifespan, but they reduce people's health span, their quality of life, right? So that's one piece. Now, a lot of functional medicine practitioners and research is showing the connection between metabolic health and cancer and dementia. So much so that there are actually some experts are starting to call dementia and cancer type 3 diabetes. And then there's just how we feel in our daily life. And so the way that our metabolism affects our energy levels in our daily life is a no-brainer, right? Because it's the system in our body that controls energy production and utilization.
That was such an epic explanation. I'm like, we need to teach classes together. This is a good partnership. Okay, so my next question is really, what I've been learning is metabolic health is, the analogy that somebody said to me, which was great, is your metabolic system is like the subway system in New York City. Like this beautiful but complex, many different ways to get there. So then specifically, let's talk about the blood sugar balance, because this has really been so interesting to me. Let me give you a picture of why it is. My kids, every single morning, guess what they want to eat? They want peanut butter and jelly or a banana or something that is totally going to spike their blood sugar, right? Sure. And then the rest of the day, I know it. If I could just get some protein in them and some carbs from vegetables, all of a sudden they chill out. So there's that element. But then I've been learning about this whole connection between every time your blood sugar spikes, you actually age. And if we can get those peaks and valleys to kind of balance out, we're going to have a better quality of life. So can you kind of talk to us about, even if you're not a diabetic, why is it important to pay attention to your blood sugar, and how do you actually have a lifestyle where you can keep it a little more balanced?
Yeah, that is an amazing question. And so, it's funny too, because as you were saying, you were excited, you came home and you talked to your husband about it, and he said, I've been telling you that for years. This is, I have a similar experience with my partner, who's a functional medicine practitioner, telling me since we started meeting, oh, insulin resistance, insulin resistance, this, don't eat a bedtime snack before we go to sleep, kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, mind your own business. This is my bedtime snack, and so I call him Dr. Boyfriend, and he's just a wealth of information. I really appreciate his involvement in my own education and health and wellness journey. But yeah, over time, I found my own why to understand blood sugar balance and insulin resistance. And, and this is actually a really important part of the work that I do with women trying to regulate their energy levels, right? Because it's also intricately, our blood sugar is inextricably linked to our stress response, right? And that's a big piece of what I work with women on, is what I call the HPA axis, or, what's commonly referred to as like adrenal fatigue. And so when your blood sugar is out of balance, and this can happen many, many ways. It can be nutrition. It can also be stress. It can be a lack of sleep, which is a form of stress, right? And so there's many ways that our blood sugar can get out of balance. It can be a gut dysbiosis even, but when our blood sugar gets out of balance, which for most of us, this happens at some point, for a majority of Americans, actually, their blood sugar is dysregulated. It impacts so many things. So your energy level, right? Like you said with your kids, they want carbs and not enough protein, right? If they eat naked carbs, right? Not enough protein, and their energy is going to spike and then it's going to crash. And so when you have these peaks and crashes in your blood sugar, when your blood sugar is high, your body releases insulin. And the whole point of insulin is it's kind of like a valet at a parking garage, right? So let's use this analogy. The insulin is going to first try to put that glucose into your liver, right? Because your liver stores sugars, but it also creates glucose, right? And sometimes the liver is full though. So then it stores it in your muscle tissues, but the muscle tissues have capacity too. That's a separate parking garage, right? And then if the liver is full of sugar and the muscles are full of sugar, then the insulin does what with that glucose? It puts it in your fat cells, and your fat cells, you never grow more fat cells. Your fat cells just grow bigger. So there's really a lot of room. That's like the unlimited parking garage. That's like, the acre field where all the blood sugar can go forever and ever. And that's what happens to a lot of people, is not only do they expand their fat cells, right, and grow more, adipose tissue is the word for it, but also they become insulin resistant. And so because your body is producing extra insulin, right, then it starts getting used to producing extra insulin. So then it produces more insulin and you start to crave more sugar, right? And so this becomes a problem, and it becomes a vicious cycle that's interrelated with your stress response, because having low blood sugar is a form of stress on your body. So when we go into the fight or flight response, when we go into a stress response, our body releases adrenaline and cortisol so that we can run from the tiger, but it also releases more glucose into our bloodstream so that we have the energy needed to run from the tiger, right? And so stress can actually throw your blood sugar out of balance. And when your blood sugar is out of balance, it can affect your sleep, right? It's really common for people to not be able to sleep through the night because their blood sugar crashes while they're sleeping. And that's why if you are going to eat a snack before bed, don't eat a sweet snack. Make sure it's like a protein rich snack. And so there's a lot of reasons why we don't want blood sugar instability in the moment, right? We don't want to have these highs and lows with our energy. But more than that, if we do that for too long, we can start to feel anxious, depressed. We can start to have issues with insomnia. Of course, we're going to have food cravings, right? We're going to have mood swings. And then on top of it, we could really go into adrenal burnout, right? Or HPA axis dysregulation, where we're going to start, kind of frying out, like our adrenals and our blood sugar. You can kind of think of them like the alternator and the battery in a car. And I don't know how familiar everybody is with these, but if your battery starts to die and you don't know it, then as it's dying, it's probably going to take your alternator with it, right? And vice versa. If your alternator starts to fail, it's going to lean too heavily on the battery. And so these different systems, if one of them is starting to struggle and they really work together, then they're going to they're burdening the other system as well. And so that's when you really start to go into burnout mode, and your body doesn't produce enough of the stress hormones that you need to even get out of bed in the morning. That's when that second and third cup of coffee actually just makes you feel worse. Coffee doesn't help you feel energized when you're that burnt out. And so that becomes a real problem. And that's where we get into people, developing what's called adrenal fatigue or HPA axis dysfunction. And that's actually basically a form of pre-diabetes. And so there's a huge majority of Americans who are considered pre-diabetic. And even more Americans are considered insulin resistant. I would say the majority of Americans are actually considered insulin resistant. And that's just the people that are, crossing the line. It's a spectrum, right? So there's people who are like almost or about to be considered insulin resistant. There's hardly, anybody in our modern, stress-driven hustle culture society that is not struggling. Most people are struggling with this. And a big part of it is also how we were fed growing up. We ate cereal before we got on the school bus, and then ate more carbs throughout the day. And so we've really been fed this lie that carbs should make up the largest part of our diet, and specifically refined carbohydrates and sugars we're just really, really kind of pushed on us with, I would say, inaccurate nutritional advice for the past few decades.
Yeah, we need an overhaul.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. But I didn't answer your question about what we can do about it. So I know that's a lot about the problem. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but this is relevant, right? So if you want to keep your energy levels high, as well as keep your long-term health in order, I do recommend keeping an eye on your blood sugar. So this is something that you can pay attention to just in how you feel, right? Do you notice, like with your kids, you notice their energy levels, like you can pay attention to this. Is it something that you want to test? They have devices that you can buy. There's just the finger prick blood glucose monitors that diabetics use. There's also these continuous glucose monitors that you can get with a prescription. There's different services. We can put a link in the show notes as to how you can get those kinds of things. But yeah, there's a continuous glucose monitor that will keep track of your blood sugar 24/7. And there's ways that you can study this to really be mindful of your blood sugar. But I would say, the best tips that I have for maintaining a healthy metabolism overall and stabilizing your blood sugar, which is really, really, really important for your health. We've already said that, but just to drive it home, it's so important, is to get enough sleep at night. I know it seems unrelated, but it really makes a big difference in your willpower during the day. Don't eat naked carbs, especially for breakfast. Eat some protein and fat with those carbohydrates. And then get enough exercise. And the timing of exercise is really interesting, because if you exercise before you've eaten breakfast in the morning, right, when you're in a fasting state, and that's another piece. It's not just what you eat, it's also the timing of what you eat, but I'll share about that in just a moment. If you exercise for, moderate exercise for at least 20 minutes or more before you eat breakfast in the morning, then your body is going to start to burn fat, right? You're going to already your blood sugar is low from being in a fasting state all night. And so your body is going to say, okay, there's not enough fat, there's not enough blood sugar just flowing in the blood. It's not, you're going to burn through the blood sugar in your muscles, the glucose in your muscles. And your body's going to go, okay, we're going to head to the reserves. We're going to the fat cells to grab out the glycogen that we need to keep powering the muscles to exercise. And, when it comes to exercise, people talk about leg day, but for me, every day is leg day, as far as like walking, hiking, jogging, literally even just 5 minutes of going on a walk around the block can make a big difference. And the other time when it's great to exercise like this is after you eat. And so again, even just a 5 to, up to 20-minute walk after you eat a meal can help to stabilize your blood sugar and keep it from spiking. It will help it to stabilize, because your legs are the biggest muscles in your body. Your quads, your glutes, your legs have so much muscle tissue in them compared to the other muscles in your body. Of course, weightlifting is great, other forms of exercise, whatever you want to do, but on a full stomach, sometimes going on a walk is just really as best as you're going to get. And it makes such a huge difference. It's so simple, but it really matters. And then the timing of when to eat, It depends on where you're at with your health. So for people whose blood sugar is really out of balance, right? And you're really flirting with burnout, or you're already there, you're having a hard time sleeping at night or staying asleep, you're kind of in that wired and tired space in the evening. And then during the day, you're dragging, you're feeling the brain fog and like just irritability throughout the day, low energy. You probably need to maintain your blood sugar a little bit better throughout the day. So if you're in that space, I wouldn't recommend skipping meals. I would recommend, eating a protein-rich breakfast and a protein-rich lunch and a protein-rich dinner, because protein really helps to stabilize your blood sugar. Make sure you have enough healthy fats, choose healthy carbs, avoid processed sugars like the plague. Don't overdo it with caffeine. If you can cut out alcohol, cut it out or reduce it. And that will really help to stabilize your blood sugar. For those of us that are more stable, or once you become more stable, and those 3 meals a day, if you need snacks in between them, do that. Just choose a smart snack. I guess my main advice for people who are blood sugar unstable and energy unstable is don't let yourself get hangry, because once you get hangry, it's all downhill from there. But don't let yourself get hangry. And then if you're beyond that and you're more stabilized, then I actually do recommend at least a 12-hour fast each night. So a lot of people talk about intermittent fasting. And, for people who are really dysregulated, fasting of any kind isn't great. I hope I don't have to say this, but like low fat diets or lemonade cleanses are, really outdated. they're, if you're doing that, just stop. It's not the best thing for you, but intermittent fasting has its place. And I think that the best place for it is at night while you're sleeping. Just stop eating after dinner and don't eat until you have breakfast. And I feel like a 12-hour fast is really reasonable for most people. I tend to do a 14-hour fast, but every now and again, I do still sneak in a dessert or a little snack after dinner, and that's okay. And so, that would be my recommendation around timing of eating. If you are more stable, not having snacks in between meals can also really help your body, because that way it gives your body time to process what you've eaten, instead of always having to constantly deal with increases in blood sugar.
That is very practical and helpful advice, and I can see it play out on my own health journey. So at one point I was using drugs and caffeine and not eating. And then
Yeah.
when I started to get healthy, I was like, I have to eat every 2 hours.
Yes.
And in pregnancy, I had some blood sugar issues. So I would wake up in the middle of the night and eat to keep my blood sugar balance. And now finally I'm getting more regulated, and I stop eating around 6 p.m. and I have breakfast around 9 a.m. And it used to be snack until bed, eat first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And it is great to see how my body regulates. And actually it feels so much better to go to bed without all the snacking, and to wake up in the morning and, hydrate and do all the things. I'm going to add in the exercise first thing in the morning. I'm glad that you brought that up. Such a good idea. And I was listening to the Whoop podcast. This is a great podcast. Whoop is a medical device that tracks your heart rate variability. Their podcast, they have excellent guests, and their guest was Dr. Casey, who owns a company that sells glucose monitors. And she said she did a little study in her office where they're all very conscious of their blood sugar. So this was kind of a big deal for them. Half of the office drank a Coca-Cola, which is full of sugar. The other half didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they all went on a 30-minute walk after drinking the Coca-Cola. And their blood sugar, the people who drink the Coca-Cola, just by walking, their blood sugar dropped 30 points.
Yeah.
So that's such a practical tip. Anyone can do it.
Right.
To take that walk or have those walk breaks throughout your day. I think sometimes we're like, oh, I have to start working out means like you're going to CrossFit or something.
Right.
And it's like, no, just take a 30-minute walk.
Totally. Even as little as 5 minutes of squats in your office or your living room or wherever you are, if going on a walk isn't practical or the weather's rough or whatever, even just 5 or 10 minutes of squats, walking, whatever activates your leg muscles. It does not have to be super intense. Yeah, it's a simple habit to explore.
This is so good. Okay, in a moment, we're going to find out how people can learn more. But I would, before we move to that, really appreciate it if you would talk to us about what this focus has done for you as an entrepreneur. Having the focus on your wellness and your energy levels, what does it allow you to do?
Yeah, I mean, our health is our wealth. Like our health is the foundation for everything we do. And as an entrepreneur, we are the business. Whether you're selling products or services or you have a personal brand, it doesn't really matter because you're not just showing up to work and doing what someone else tells you to do and doing, a good enough job so that they don't fire you. Like you definitely have got to bring your A game. Being self-employed, we wear so many hats. It takes a lot of creative energy. It takes a lot of mindset work and motivation. And doing that when you are hangry, anxious, depressed, and sleep deprived is just not very realistic, to be honest. And, it's funny because when I decided I'm going to start a business back in 2016, I moved onto the grid and I decided to turn my lunar calendar into an online business. And, and that's also when I had my health collapse. They happened at the same time. And I'll tell you what, it made it pretty hard for me to focus on my business. It made it really hard for me to market it effectively and grow the business. And that's a big part of why I decided to focus on holistic health and bring the calendar into my work and the moon phases into my work with women's health. So it's, when we take care of ourselves first, we have so much more to give, right? How can we give the best of our gifts in service to others when we don't take care of ourselves first? It just doesn't work that way. And as women, we really are conditioned to put ourselves and our self-care and our well-being at the bottom of the to-do list and take care of all the other responsibilities and everyone else's needs before our own. But that's just, quite frankly, backwards from what it needs to be. Honestly, we as women, we are birthing the future generations. We are a lot of times setting the tone for our children. We're setting the example for our children. We're setting the container up for our families and our communities. We are like I don't want to sound cheesy, but we're like the center of the circle of life for our species. We birth all the humans. And then a lot of times we feed them. And so, it's really, really important for us to be healthy, not just as women, but also as entrepreneurs, as we're birthing our creative projects, as we're bringing our gifts in service to others. How can we, how can you birth and raise a healthy child if you're not a healthy woman? It's going to be a lot harder. How can you birth and raise a healthy business and creative pursuit if you're not taking care of yourself first?
Absolutely. Well, I certainly hope this podcast has been inspiring to all of you listeners. If something resonated, maybe you thought of someone that needs to hear Lauren's talk, please take a screenshot right now, share it with them. You can tag us on social media. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And Lauren, if someone wants to deep dive with you, do you have anything going on? How can they connect with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to connect with everybody on social media. It's super fun for me to stay connected with people on there. And also you can go to my social media accounts or you can go to my website. The links will be below and check out my upcoming masterclass on overcoming exhaustion. So it's titled Exhausted to Energized. And you can find the link to join the free workshop webinar in the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thanks for the work you're doing and everything that you're teaching the world. As always, it's beautiful to see someone shining in their truth and bringing their passion project to the world. So I learned a lot today. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me, Arin. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. Really appreciate it.
And to all the listeners, I will hear you next time. Bye, everybody.